Anti-Jewish oppression, the best way I can describe it is it's always there, but it's latent. And it's like I think of it like a volume dial, like you can turn it way down and you can't really hear the sound, but it's still, the sound is happening. It's coming through the radio. And I think of anti-Jewish oppression like that it's always there. And as long as the interests of the owning class are unchallenged, the volume is turned really, really low. It's so low that we can't see it or we can't hear it. But when there's a need for a scapegoat, when owning class is seeking to create division, confusion, to create distraction, then the volume on anti-Jewish oppression turns way up. And sometimes during the pogroms or the most recent Holocaust, the volume gets turned so far up that we see concentration camps and we see massacres of Jewish people. Anti-Jewish oppression is always present, but only visible in cycles. And it will be predictably turned up when there is an economic downturn. We can count on that. That will be true until we end anti-Jewish oppression. Because it's meant to disrupt the efforts, because anti-Jewish oppression will disrupt and any efforts that will threaten owning class interests. So they will make sure that volume gets turned way up. We are at a moment when the dial is getting turned up. It's not our imagination. And it's not surprising because we're coming out of a global pandemic, economic downturn. So at the same time that the world's richest 10 men have doubled their fortune from 700 billion to 1.5 trillion, that is at a rate of $15,000 per second. You know, these numbers feel fantastical and bizarre because they are. That's $1.3 billion per day. 160 million people have been pushed into poverty. Just to use a local example of oil, Exxon, Chevron, BP, and Shell profits are at their highest level in over 7 years. We're talking multi-billion dollars of profits, all while US gas prices have reached their highest level in this last major economic downturn, which is last July. And so this is important for us to recognize that anti-Jewish oppression is going to get turned up because it distracts us from this hoarding of wealth and greed that is happening at the same time. So every time you notice that there is more anti-Jewish oppression, you can assume we're wanting to be distracted by the owning class because they don't want us to see sort of what's at the root of this economic inequality and to divert focus to a scapegoat, which has historically been Jews and immigrants. And as we see this climate crisis accelerating at the same time, I mean, many of these oil companies made promises to stop extracting oil and they have all reneged because they just made so much money last year. And so there's going to be increasing people who are climate refugees who are going to be taking on these migrant patterns, diasporic patterns that Jews were targeted with over millennium. So you're going to see more anti-immigrant oppression, which is fundamentally anti-Jewish oppression.